Picture this. It's a night, hundreds of thousands of years ago. You are a small, soft, slow creature standing in the dark. You have no claws, no fangs worth mentioning, no fur thick enough to keep the cold from creeping into your bones. Around you, the darkness is alive. Things with better eyes than yours are watching. Things with better teeth than yours are waiting. And you are afraid of one thing above almost everything else in the world: fire. Because in nature, fire means death. It roars through the grass. It swallows forests. When lightning splits the sky and the world catches flame, every animal with any sense runs the other way as fast as its legs can carry it. Your ancestors ran too. For millions of years they ran. And then, one day, one of them stopped running. One of them turned around, walked toward the thing that every living creature feared, and picked it up. That single moment, one terrified, curious creature reaching into the flames, may be the most important thing that has ever happened in the history of our species. More important than the wheel. More important than farming. More important, arguably, than anything that came after, because everything that came after was built on top of it. Tonight, we're going to figure out how it happened. How a frightened ape with no understanding of chemistry, no words for what it was doing, and every instinct in its body screaming at it to flee, tamed the one force of nature that could destroy it. And how that single act of courage quietly rewrote what a human being even is. Let's start where every good story starts, with the problem. For most of our history, our ancestors were not the top of the food chain. That is a comforting lie we tell ourselves. The truth is that early humans were prey. We were the animal that got eaten. Big cats hunted us. Hyenas scattered our bones. In the fossil record, you can find the skulls of our ancestors with the puncture marks of a leopard's teeth spaced exactly right to have carried them up into a tree. We were snacks. And at night it was worse, because the night belonged to the predators. Their eyes worked in the dark. Ours did not. So when the sun went down, our ancestors did the only thing they could. They huddled together, in caves or in trees, held their breath and waited for morning. Every single night was a small siege. Every dawn was a victory just for still being alive. Into this world, cold, dark, and full of teeth, then came fire. But not fire we made. Fire we found. Because here is the thing most people get wrong. Humans did not invent fire. Fire already existed. It fell from the sky in lightning strikes. It burst from volcanoes. It smoldered in the aftermath of wildfires, glowing in the embers of a burned tree for days. Fire was everywhere. What no creature had ever done was keep it. So imagine that first encounter. A wildfire has torn through the landscape. The flames have moved on, but the destruction remains. Blackened ground, smoke still curling into the air, and here and there, a log still burning. Every animal has fled. The plain is empty. Except for one small group of hominins creeping back to see what's left. And they notice something. Where the fire has passed, the ground is warm. The night, for once, is not freezing. And there is something else. Scattered across the burned earth are the bodies of animals that didn't escape, and they smell incredible. Cooked, though no one there has a word for cooked. Just better, softer, easier. This is the beginning. Not with a spark. With a scavenger, standing in the ashes of a wildfire, realizing that this terrifying thing left gifts behind. Before we go any further, if you're enjoying this, do me a quick favor and tap that like button. It genuinely helps this video reach more curious people, and it's the only thanks I ask. And if you love this kind of deep dive into where we came from, subscribe and stick around. We're just getting to the good part. Now, scavenging from a wildfire is one thing, but it doesn't last. The fire burns out, the warmth fades, the night comes back as cold and hungry as ever. To truly change everything, our ancestors had to do something no animal had ever done. They had to take a piece of that fire and keep it alive. Think about how strange that is. Fire is not a thing. It's a process. It's hungry. It has to eat constantly or it dies. To keep a fire, you have to feed it. The right fuel, in the right amount, sheltered from the wind and the rain. You have to understand on some deep level that this glowing thing is alive in a way, and that if you stop caring for it, it will go out and it will not come back. The first firekeepers were, in a sense, the first pet owners. Except the pet was a living flame that could kill you if you got careless, and save your life if you didn't. We think this started with embers. A group would find a fire. From lightning, from a volcano, from a lucky wildfire. And instead of just warming themselves and moving on, one clever individual would carry a burning branch or a bundle of smoldering coals wrapped in bark back to their shelter. And there, they would nurse it. Feed it dry grass, then twigs, then branches. Coax it from a dying ember back into a living flame. And that flame would change everything about their night. Because now, when the sun went down, they were not helpless. They had a wall of light and heat that no predator would cross. Watch any animal, even today, react to fire. The lion stops at the edge of the firelight. The instinct that every creature has, run from the flames, now worked in our favor. For the first time in the history of our kind, the night was ours. Sit with what that means. For millions of years, the dark was a prison our ancestors survived. And then, in a single generation, it became a room they could live in. The predators were still out there, but now they were out there, and our ancestors were in here, warm and awake and together watching the fire. And that changed us. Not just our safety, our minds. Because here's what happens when you're no longer terrified every night. You have time. Time you never had before. The hours after dark used to be dead hours, hours of hiding and hoping. Now they were alive, and a group of humans sitting around a fire, safe, warm, not sleeping yet. What do? They talk. Anthropologists who study the few remaining hunter-gatherer societies noticed something remarkable. During the day, people's conversations are practical. Where's the food? Who's doing what? Fix this, carry that. But at night, around the fire, the conversation transforms. It becomes stories, myths, gossip about people who aren't there, talk of the spirits, of the ancestors, of what things mean. The firelight, it turns out, is where culture was born. The flames gave us the one thing our ancestors never had: safe, idle time together in the dark, with nothing to do but wonder. But we're still not at the deepest change. Because fire didn't just protect us and give us stories. Fire went inside us. Fire rebuilt our bodies. And to understand how, we have to talk about the thing you saw in those ashes: cooking. Now let's talk about what fire did to our food, because this is where it gets genuinely mind-bending. A raw diet is expensive, not in money, in energy. Think about a gorilla. A gorilla is a huge, powerful animal, and it spends up to 8-10 hours a day just chewing. Chewing raw leaves, raw stems, raw plants. It has to because raw food is tough, and it's locked. The nutrients are trapped inside cell walls and long, stubborn fibers, and the only way to get them out is to grind and grind and grind and then let a massive gut slowly ferment the rest. Our ancestors ate like this too. Big teeth, big jaws, a big gut to process it all. Most of their waking life was spent finding food and then physically breaking it down. And then they started cooking. And cooking is like pre-digesting your food outside your body. When you apply heat to meat, it breaks down the tough connective tissue. When you apply heat to roots and tubers, it bursts the starches open and makes their energy suddenly, easily available. Cooked food is softer, safer. The heat kills parasites and bacteria that raw food carries. And above all, cooked food gives you far more usable energy for far less effort. Suddenly, our ancestors were getting more calories out of every bite and spending less time and energy getting them. And a body that suddenly has a surplus of energy can afford to do something it could never afford before. It can afford to grow a bigger brain. Because here's a secret about the human brain. It is outrageously expensive. Your brain is about 2% of your body weight, but it burns roughly 20% of your energy. It is, calorie for calorie, the most demanding organ you have. A brain like ours is a luxury item, and for most of evolutionary history, no primate could afford it. Cooking changed the budget. With cooked food pouring more energy into the body, evolution could quietly start reallocating. The huge gut no longer needed to process endless raw fiber could shrink. The massive teeth and jaws could get smaller, and the energy freed up by all of that could be redirected, poured, over hundreds of thousands of years, into building the most complex object in the known universe. The human brain. Look at the timeline and it lines up with a chill down your spine. As evidence of fire use spreads through our ancestors' history, their guts shrink, their teeth shrink, their faces get flatter and softer, and their brains balloon. We start looking less like an ape and more like us. There is a real scientific idea, and it's a beautiful one, that we did not tame fire. Fire tamed us. That once our ancestors started cooking, they became dependent on it. Our bodies adapted to eat cooked food and can no longer thrive on a fully raw one. Our small mouths, our weak jaws, our short guts. They only make sense if you assume something outside the body is doing part of the digestion. Fire isn't a tool we picked up. It's a part of our biology now. We are the ape that cannot survive without cooking. Let that reframe the whole story. We didn't just conquer fire, we fused with it. Somewhere back in the dark, our ancestors made a bargain with the flames, and we have been keeping it every single day for 1,000,000 years. Every meal you have ever cooked is a continuation of that same ancient contract. Real quick, if your mind is being pulled in by this, that's exactly why I make these. Hit subscribe so the next one finds you, because we chase down a new, how did humans actually do this question just like this one every single week? Okay, back into the dark, now. There's one more leap, and it's the biggest one of all. Keeping fire is incredible, but it has a terrifying weakness. What happens when it goes out? Because it will go out. Rain will come. The fuel will run low. Someone one night will fall asleep. And the flame that your whole group depends on, for warmth, for safety, for food, will die. And if you can only find fire and never make it, then losing it is a catastrophe. You are plunged back into the cold and the dark, praying for the next lightning strike. So the final staggering achievement was this: learning to make fire from nothing. Think about what that requires. To make fire, you need to understand, without any theory, without any science, that friction creates heat, and that heat, focused enough, can create flame. You need to take dry wood and spin it, or scrape it, or strike the right stones together, fast and hard and long enough to birth a spark, and then catch that fragile spark in a nest of the driest, finest tinder, and breathe it, gently, patiently, into life. It is genuinely difficult. Try it sometime with nothing but sticks. Your hands will blister. Your arms will burn. Most people give up. The first humans who figured it out had no instructions, no idea it was even possible, and every reason to believe that fire came only from the sky. But somebody did it. Somebody, through 1,000 accidents and 1,000 attempts, spun a stick or struck a stone and watched a spark leap into a flame that they had made with their own hands out of nothing but effort and knowledge. And in that moment, everything flipped. Fire was no longer a gift they had to wait for and pray to keep. It was a power they owned. They could walk into the coldest, darkest, emptiest place on earth, kneel down and summon warmth and light from the ground itself. They carried the sun in their hands. There is no going back from that. A creature that can make fire is not the same creature that huddled in the dark, waiting to be eaten. It is something new, something that shapes its world instead of only enduring it. And once we could make fire on demand, it stopped being only about warmth and food. It became the first workshop, the first laboratory, the mother of every technology that would ever follow. It started small. Someone discovered that if you took the tip of a wooden spear and hardened it in the flames, it became far tougher, sharper, deadlier, less likely to snap. A soft stick became a real weapon, all because of fire. For the first time, we were using flame not just to survive the night, but to change the properties of a material, to make something better than nature gave us. And from there, it never stopped. Fire let us bend wood, dry it, shape it. Much later, someone noticed that certain kinds of mud, baked hard in a fire, turned to stone that could hold water. And pottery was born, and with it, the ability to store food and carry water and cook in ways never possible before. Later still, humans built fires hot enough to pull shining metal out of dull rock. Copper, then bronze, then iron. Whole ages of history are named after the metals that fire made possible. The Bronze Age, the Iron Age. Every sword, every plow, every tool that built the ancient world came out of a furnace, and it goes all the way up to now. The glass in your window, made in fire. The steel in every building and bridge and car, made in fire. The electricity lighting the room you're in right now is very likely made by burning something in a power plant to boil water and spin a turbine. We built rockets on controlled explosions. We are, at this very moment, a civilization running on fire. We just hide it inside engines and power stations and pretend we've moved past it. We haven't. We've only gotten better at aiming it. Every piece of technology you own is a descendant of that first hardened spear tip, and that spear tip is a descendant of that first kept ember, and that ember is a descendant of that first brave creature in the ashes. It is all one unbroken line of fire, stretching from a terrified ape in the dark straight to the glowing screen in your hands. But here's something most people never realize. Fire didn't just change our tools and our bodies. Once we truly controlled it, we started using it to reshape the entire world around us. Because early humans figured out something clever and a little frightening. If you set fire to an area of dry grassland on purpose and then let it burn, extraordinary things happen. The old, dead growth is cleared away, and in the season that follows, fresh green shoots push up through the ash, tender new plants that grazing animals love. So the deer, the antelope, the wild herds are drawn straight to the land you burned. You have, in effect, built yourself a hunting ground. You've turned the landscape itself into a trap and a garden at the same time. We see this all over the world. Indigenous peoples in Australia practiced what's often called fire stick farming for tens of thousands of years, deliberately, carefully burning patches of land to manage the whole ecosystem, to encourage the plants and animals they needed, and to prevent the massive, uncontrolled wildfires that build up when dead brush is left to pile on for years. They weren't just surviving in their environment. They were gardening a continent with fire as their only tool. Think about the scale of that. A creature that not long before ran screaming from the flames is now using those same flames to sculpt entire landscapes to its will, moving herds, shaping forests, deciding which plants live and which die across thousands of square miles. This is the moment our ancestors stopped being just another animal fitting into nature and started becoming something that bends nature to fit them. And that mindset, that the world is not just something to endure, but something to shape, is arguably the most human idea there is. Every field we plow, every city we build, every river we dam, is that same impulse, scaled up. It all begins here, with a person and a burning stick, choosing to change the world instead of simply living in it. So turn all of this over in your mind for a second. Everything you are, your soft skin that assumes there will be clothes and shelter, your small teeth that assume the food will be cooked, your enormous, hungry, dreaming brain that assumes there will be enough energy to run it, all of it rests on that one decision made by someone whose name is lost forever to stop running from the flames and pick them up. You are, in a very real sense, a fire-shaped animal. Every warm night you've ever slept through, every hot meal, every candle, every stove, every light against the dark, it all traces back to that terrified, curious ancestor standing in the ashes. We usually tell the story of human progress as a story of big inventions, the wheel, writing, the engine, the microchip. But those are all just sparks thrown off by the first and greatest fire. Without a warm night, there's no time to talk. Without talk, there are no stories. Without cooking, there is no brain big enough to dream up a wheel at all. Everything begins in the firelight. And maybe that's why, even now, with all our screens and all our power, something in you still goes quiet when you sit in front of a real flame. Why we still gather around fire pits and campfires and candles and feel without knowing why that this is where we belong. Some part of you remembers. Some part of you is still that ancestor, warm at last, staring into the flames, safe for one more night, dreaming about tomorrow. We didn't discover fire. Fire discovered what we could become. So the next time you flick on a stove without a second thought, pause just for a moment and remember that someone a very long time ago was brave enough or curious enough to reach into the one thing that could kill them, so that you would never have to be afraid of the dark. If this gave you a new way to see something you take for granted every day, leave a like. It helps more than you know. And subscribe, because next time we're going to answer another question you've never thought to ask about the strange, brilliant, accidental story of how we became human. Until then, keep wondering.